Hey guys, it's Lucky here, and today we're going to be talking about the Magicka Sorcerer. The Magicka Sorcerer is Elder Scrolls Online's North Star. By that I mean, it's always strong, it's always great for solo content, it's always great for group content, it's great for trials. It just seems to be one of those classes that's always in a good spot. Not only that, it's always got a very easy rotation thanks to the fact that it's running 2 pets on both bars, which means you don't have to maintain nearly as many abilities as other classes do. This simple rotation definitely doesn't result in lower DPS, however, as it's one of the hardest hitting classes in the game. In the video here in the background, I'm going to be showing you footage of me taking down massive groups of mobs so you can see the AoE capabilities. I'm going to be running veteran solo content so you can see how well it can solo bosses and world bosses and the like. Because of the changes in gear this patch, we're going to be taking advantage of some new sets on this sorcerer this time around. And I know a lot of you are going to be excited about this. This build does not require any trial gear, and it is still capable of doing every piece of content in the game, whether it's veteran DLC, or veteran hard mode. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin. In this video, I'm going to talk about race, mundus, attributes, consumables, gear, skills, rotation, passives, and more. As always, I'll put a link to the written guide in the description down below so that you can refer to that at will, and then listen to the video as you're playing the game and hopefully absorb a lot of knowledge about this class. By the time you're done listening to this video, you will know everything there is to know about the sorcerer, how your skills work, and why we chose the skills we chose, as well as why our passives are what are making us really strong, and which passives we're going to be using. If some of the stuff I'm saying doesn't make sense, come back in a week or two after you've spent a little time on the character, listen to it again, and I guarantee you'll learn something new. All right, first up, let's talk about our race. For the race on a Magicka DPS toon right now, you can't go wrong with High Elf or Dark Elf. These are the top 2 damage dealers right now, and Khajiit is closely behind them. And as always, we've got Breton for sustain. If you're a new player, you can't go wrong with Breton. They've got great sustain, they do great damage, and they have some nice damage mitigation built in. If you're building this character specifically to go after super endgame content and you want to get some sweaty parses out of it later on, then go ahead and grab High Elf or Dark Elf. As for the Mundus Stone, you can grab Lover while soloing and Thief while in a group. Or if you don't want to bother switching back and forth, feel free to use Thief all the time. As for our attributes, we're going to put all 64 points into Magicka because the bigger our mag pool, the more damage we do. That's in the equation that determines how much damage every spell you do. It's partly based off the size of your mag pool, so we want that sucker as big as we can get it. As for our consumables, we're going to be using Witchmother's Potent Brew. Witchmother's Potent Brew is going to give us about 3,000 health, 3,000 max mag, again increasing our damage because of its increasing our max Magicka pool size, and it's going to give us Magicka recovery of 315. If you find yourself running out of Magicka still because perhaps you're lower CP, feel free to use Ghastly Eyeball instead. It's not going to give you the health, but it is going to give you more Magicka, which means more damage and better sustain. For our potions, feel free to use the trash potions that drop off of mobs, your simple Essence of Magicka potions, and whenever you're doing something difficult or you're going to go for that veteran solo content, go ahead and equip those Essence of Spell Power potions. Essence of Spell Power potions are expensive, so only use them when you really need that extra bit of damage, but definitely recognize that Essence of Spell Power potions are going to do massive things for your damage. It is a significant damage increase, and it's not something you should ignore. Definitely equip them when you're doing difficult content. As for the gear, we're going to run Burning Spellweave on the body and Pillar of Nirn on the jewelry and front bar weapon, which is going to be a fire staff. Again, feel free to reference the written guide for all of this information in a much easier to follow format. When soloing, we're going to be using the Ring of the Pale Order. This ring is phenomenal for solo content. It really can't be beat, so if you have access to it, definitely pick it up. It is a best in slot item for all solo builds. It is not required, however, and you can definitely do this build without it. You're just going to have to be a little more careful about how much damage you let your character take at any one given moment. Fortunately, the Sorc is better equipped to deal with this than most for reasons we'll get into when we're talking about our skills. The Sorc probably does better without Ring of Pale Order than any other class. If you don't wear the Ring of the Pale Order while soloing, feel free to use Ice Heart Monster Set instead. That's going to create a shield that mitigates damage that you take, helping to offset the incoming damage. When you are wearing the Ring of the Pale Order though, you're going to slot the one-piece Slime Craw on the helmet, and you're going to move the piece that would have been on your ring finger that's now taken by the Ring of the Pale Order, and that's going to go to your shoulder. If that doesn't make sense, just look at the written guide and you'll see it all there, how it all fits together. You're definitely going to have all 5 pieces of Burning Spellweave and all 5 pieces of Pillar of Nirn, 1 piece Slime Craw, and your Ring of the Pale Order. And then on the back bar, we're going to have Maelstrom Inferno Staff. The Maelstrom Inferno Staff is a fantastic back bar weapon, and really at the moment, nothing beats it. It gives us an excuse to use our Wall of Elements, which is a great AoE dot, and anything being hit by this AoE dot our Wall of Elements is going to take increased damage from our light attacks. We use light attacks more than any other ability in the game, so increasing the damage our light attacks does is incredibly beneficial. Since we will be light attacking in between every ability, in other words, we'll be light attack weaving, which is something you should definitely be doing. And if you don't know what that is, definitely look at my YouTube video on the topic. I'll link that down in the description below in case you want it. Okay, next let's dive into the skills and the things that are really going to make this build tick. The first skill we're going to be using is Boundless Storm. Boundless Storm is a fantastic skill because it does amazing damage, but it's also going to give us major resolve, which increases our resistances by 6,000. That is a significant reduction in damage that we're taking anytime something attacks us. It's also going to grant major expedition, increasing our move speed by 30% for 4 seconds. That's just kind of a nice added bonus. In content, we won't use that too much because, we'll burn through our magic if we just keep casting this every 4 seconds, but it is nice to have. It feels good when you do pop this. You're going to want to keep Boundless Storm up all the time when you're fighting a lot of mobs or something that hits really hard. It's great for keeping you alive. Our second ability is Crystal Fragments. This is going to be our spammable. Crystal Fragments does an insane amount of damage as our spammable, and the cool thing about it is casting a magic ability has a 35% chance to cause our next Crystal Fragments to be instant, meaning there's no cast time. Typically, Crystal Fragments is a casted ability with a cast time 0.8 seconds, which can feel a little awkward to get used to at first, but once you do, man, this skill hits so hard, and then when you proc it, right, that 35% chance to cause it to do instant cast, that proc does 66% increased damage, so 66% more damage than normal, and it costs 50% less, which makes it phenomenal for our sustain. So anytime this ability procs, the ability will turn pink. You're going to fire it instantly. Doesn't matter what else you're doing, stop and fire that. I mean, unless you're doing something to keep yourself alive, make sure you use that proc immediately whenever you see it. It's big damage for you. The third ability on our front bar is Daedric Prey. This is very important anytime you're running a sorcerer with really any number of pets. This is going to increase the damage your pets do by 20%. That is a significant amount of damage. So you put this on the target, ideally the boss or the largest enemy, and it's going to cause your pets to do 20% more damage. That includes the 2 pets that are on your bars, as well as the pet that you spot for an ultimate, your Greater Storm Atronach, which we'll get to, right? All of those are going to do 20% increased damage because you have this ability on that enemy. That the ability needs to be on the enemy for them to get the 20% damage buff. Not only that, you're cursing the enemy, which is going to do an insane amount of damage to them over time. It's going to deal 14,000 damage to the target and 6,000 magic damage to all nearby targets after 6 seconds. It's very important that you don't recast this ability until it falls off because the explosion happens right before it falls off. If you recast it before it explodes, aka if you recast it before it falls off, you're going to miss out on the damage. So make sure you cast the ability, and then as soon as it explodes and you see that it's fallen off the enemy, then recast it again, but definitely don't do it before, or else you're basically getting nothing out of this, except for that 20% increased damage for your pets. The fourth ability on the front bar is Summon Twilight Tormentor. Summon Twilight Tormentor is surprisingly effective at both doing damage and absorbing damage. Enemies tend to attack your summons, and that's going to be great for helping you reduce the damage you take, but they also do a significant amount of damage. And what you can do anytime you're going into a fight, basically as you're running up to the enemy at the very beginning of the fight, you can pop this ability once, and your Tormentor is going to do 53% more damage to enemies above 50% health. So it's something you only use at the beginning of the fight and basically never again. So, right, once you get all your skills pre-buffed and right before you engage the enemy, fire your Summon Twilight Tormentor one more time to get this buff on it going. But then once the battle's going, you're not going to reactivate it anymore unless it dies and you need to resummon it or something. The fifth ability on the front bar is our Summon Volatile Familiar. This familiar is going to do great damage, and you can activate it again to do a nice pulsing AoE damage around it. It does great single target damage, and it's also going to do great AoE damage, and it's just really, really good damage, especially when paired with your Daedric Prey, which is increasing its damage by 20%. For the front bar ultimate, you can go one of 2 ways. You can either simply put the Fighters Guild ultimate Flawless Dawnbreaker here as a bar buffer, or you can put Greater Storm Atronach on the front bar, and you can put Fiery Rage on the back bar. So this is probably what I would do. I would go ahead and slot Greater Storm Atronach on the front bar. This is going to buff the damage on the front bar, and it's also perhaps the highest single target damage ultimate in the game, especially when paired with your Daedric Prey. So anytime you're fighting a single target boss or you want one single target to take a ton of damage, this is the ultimate you're going to go with. And you're going to use the other ultimate on the back bar when it's a lot of enemies around that boss and you want them all to melt, right? Because this one is massive AoE damage. This one is massive single target damage. And so that's the way I would elect to set up my ults for this character. Once again, it does great damage. It's single target damage and it's buffed by your Daedric Prey. So make sure that your Daedric Prey is on the enemy when your ultimate is going. Otherwise, your ult's doing 20% less, and that's a massive damage loss. Okay, on the back bar, the first ability on the back bar is Unstable Wall of Fire. Unstable Wall of Fire is a massive rectangular AoE damage ability. It's basically just a wall of fire, like it says, and anything standing in it, it takes great damage. It's that simple. Also, it procs our Maelstrom Staff, which means all of our light attacks to all the things in there are going to take more damage. The second ability on the back bar is Mystic Orb. Mystic Orb is still one of the highest damage AoE abilities in the game, and it's really hard to pass up. If you feel like your sustain is lacking, you can always replace this with Consuming Soul Trap, which is going to improve your sustain and be a great single target dot. But Mystic Orb is much better when it comes to being AoE capable, and if you can sustain it, the damage is amazing. So there's an option there for you. If you feel like your damage is awful, or if you feel like your sustain is awful, you can go ahead and swap this out for Consuming Soul Trap. But if you can manage it, you should use this. The third ability on the back bar is Critical Surge. Critical Surge is the reason sorcerers are better equipped to run without Ring of the Beholder than any other class. Basically what this says is whenever you crit, you're going to get health back in the form of 3,000 plus health every 1 second. You're always critting because of your Boundless Storm on the front bar. It's just constantly doing damage to everything around you. One of those little ticks of damage is going to be a crit. It's going to proc your Critical Surge. Now, the thing to note about this combination is that you must be close to the enemy for Boundless Storm to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be relying on one of these other abilities to crit, which is very well likely to happen. But the closer you are to the enemy, the more likely you are to get the crit every single second and to keep your health coming back in. The fourth and fifth abilities on the back bar are just the duplicates of the front bar, right? Because you do have to double bar pets on the sorcerer, otherwise they disappear when you switch bars. So you've got to have, if you have a pet on the front bar, you have to have it on the back bar. The ultimate is excluded from this rule. You can have it on the front bar and it's there once you cast it. And for the back bar ultimate, as we touched on, this is your AoE ultimate, Fiery Rage. Whenever you use this ability, it is basically the highest AoE damage you can have in the game, and it lasts for 7 seconds and just melts everything in there. If there's trash in there, it's going to be dead by the time this is done ticking. Now that we've talked about the skills and why we use them and what they do, let's talk about the passives that are backing them up. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't take the time to read and digest the passives. So let me read them to you so that you better understand the sorcerer and how it works and why we are setting up the bars the way that we are, so you know which skills you can let go of and which ones you probably shouldn't. First, Dark Magic skill line. The first passive we're going to take reduces health, magic, and stamina costs of our non-core combat abilities by 6%. Great, it's better for our sustain. We're going to take it. Blood Magic. When you hit an enemy with a directly applied dark magic ability, you heal for 3,000 health. This effect scales off your max health and can occur once every half second. Well, we're going to constantly be casting abilities here, so you're definitely going to be getting that health back every time you use your spammable, for instance. The third passive is Persistence. After blocking an attack, your next health, magic, or stamina ability costs 15% less. And when you're soloing, you're going to be blocking a lot of attacks, and it's generally only going to happen against boss fights, right, where you need that increased sustain. So this is a nice little perk. You block a attack, and then boom, your next skill costs 15% less. Pretty nice. It's good for your sustain. It's a little thing that just kind of happens. You don't have to focus on it. The final passive in this line is Exploitation. When you cast a dark magic ability, you grant Minor Prophecy to you and your group. This is the reason you always have one sorcerer in every trial group, so they can provide Minor Prophecy to the whole group, increasing their crit chance. The first passive from this line is going to be Rebate, which restores 300 magicka or stamina when one of our abilities ends from this line. And we're using 3 abilities from this line, so we're going to be constantly getting that 300 magicka back again. Better for our sustain. The next one is Power Stone. Reduces the cost of our ultimate ability by 15%. Again, another passive that we're going to be just kind of passively taking advantage of. Our ult costs 15% less, which is one of the reasons that sorcerers have they can get to non-class ultimates faster than other classes can, like Werewolf or Destro Ultimate, for example. The third passive is going to be Daedric Protection. Increase your health and stamina recovery by 20% while you have a Daedric Summoning ability slotted. Well, we are always going to have Daedric Summoning ability slotted, so we're always going to have 20% increased sustain. Okay, the next one is Expert Summoner. Increases your max health by 8% whenever you have one of these abilities active. Whenever one of your summoning abilities is active specifically. So This is one reason you really can't make a no pet Sorc, because this is just too good to give up, right? 8% extra health, that is a lot of extra health, and you get it just by having a pet out. You also get better sustain from the previous passive by having a pet out. There's a lot of stuff that works around you, the sorcerer, having pets, having them out, and the more pets you have, generally, the better off you are, because of all these synergies between your passives and your pets. So I get that question a lot. Can I do a no pet Sorc? Yes, but it is factually going to be worse off than the pet Sorc. And with the way the Sorc is currently set up, there's no way around that. But that's okay. We're going to use these pets and we're going to destroy things. The next set of passives we're going to talk about are from our Stormcalling line. Capacitor increases our magic recovery by 10%. Great, good for our sustain. Energize increases our physical and shock damage by 5%. This is nice. You know, we've got a bit of shock damage going out. Got a good bit of physical damage going out. So this is just a little bit of, 5% extra damage is something. That's nice. Amplitude increases our damage done against enemies by 1% for every 10% current health they have. So this is a bit of a reverse execute. The higher the enemy's health, the more damage we do to them with this passive. It's one of the reasons that sorcerers will usually be at the top of the DPS charts for the first half of the battle. They're doing 10% extra damage at the start, more so than anybody else. The final passive is Expert Mage. Increase your weapon and spell damage by 2% for each sorcerer ability slotted. Current bonus, 12%. See how we are getting 12% increased damage on our front bar? Now you see why our front bar is loaded with sorcerer abilities. The front bar is where you spend most of your time on every single build, except perhaps something like the Necro that's constantly bar swapping back and forth on the Macro. But most classes, you're going to spend the majority of your time on the front bar using your spammable when everything else is already ticking. And for that reason, you want the front bar to do as much damage as possible. You want all the bar buffers up here. Boom. We've got 12% increased damage. Basically, we're getting 2% increased damage for each Sorc skill. Boom. Sorc, right? We've got 6 Sorc abilities. And that's why we're putting the Sorc abilities on the front bar. And that's why we're not putting the non-Sorc abilities on the front bar, right? We want all the bar buffers up on the front, and then we can put anything that's non-Sorc on the back bar where it doesn't matter. This skill is very important to take notice of when setting up your bar layout as a sorcerer. As for our weapon passives, we're going to grab the Destro passives, every single one. These are all going to be good for our damage and our sustain. Grab them all. For the light armor passives, go ahead and grab them all. And if you do wear 1 or 2 pieces of medium armor, like I suggest, then go ahead and grab the dexterity passive for the increased crit damage and the agility passive for the increased weapon and spell damage. You can grab other passives in here that are useful for you if you would like, but these 2 are the most important ones. Next, go to the Fighters Guild. If you do decide to slot Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front bar for the passive damage increase, make sure you grab Slayer for the increased weapon and spell damage, and make sure you grab Banish the Wicked to generate 3 ultimate whenever you kill an enemy while a Fighters Guild ability is slotted. Same thing with Mages and Psijic Order. If you do elect to use Mages and Psijic Order abilities, go ahead and get those passives, okay? For the Undaunted line, we're definitely going to grab both Undaunted passives. This is very important. They're great for your max resource values, and they're also great for your sustain. From the Assault line, make sure you put 1 point into continuous attack. That's going to increase your move speed by 30% at all times, anytime that you are on a mount. No reason to put 2 points though. The second point does not give you another 30%, and it does nothing for you outside of PvP and Cyrodiil. Next up, we're going to grab our racial passives. Go ahead and grab them all. They're all useful in their own way. It doesn't matter what race you pick. Make sure you grab these passives sooner than later. They are usually pretty powerful. And finally, crafting. We're going to go to alchemy and grab medicinal use, and we're going to take that to level 3. That's going to make it so that your potions last as long as your cooldowns, right? So your potions have a buff on them that lasts roughly 40 seconds, for instance, and potion cooldown time is going to be 45 seconds. Without leveling medicinal use, the potion is going to fall off and its effects are going to fall off. So the increased spell damage, you're going to lose that. The increased crit chance, you're going to lose that. And the increased sustain, the 30% increased sustain that you get from your potion, you're going to lose that as well if you don't have medicinal use leveled up. So you'll have like a 20% downtime on those buffs. So make sure you grab medicinal use so that you have 100% uptime on those buffs. Very important for your damage whenever you're doing sweaty content, whenever you're parsing, whenever you're doing something where your damage really matters. And again, just to remind you, potions and food are not optional in Elder Scrolls Online. Potions and food are mandatory. I can't emphasize that enough. It's something every new player overlooks for probably too long. I did it the same way when I started. I was like, how important can potions and food be? Very important. If you're having sustain problems, in other words, if you're running out of Magicka a lot, almost always it's going to be because you're not using food, you're not using the right food, and you're not using potions. All right, next up, let's talk about the rotation. Okay, so the way the rotation is going to work on this character is you're going to pre-buff, right? You're going to cast everything that won't draw aggro, just like every class will at the start of the battle. For the sorcerer, that's going to be both of your pets. Then you're going to get your Critical Surge, right? This lasts 33 seconds, so we're going to get that on early. And then finally, we're going to grab Boundless Storm. Boundless Storm is going to do damage around you, so if you are near something, it will aggro it. At that point, you're probably close enough to aggro it anyway. So just be aware of that. It can hit things even before you do. And now that all of your skills that won't pull aggro are on you, go ahead and start laying down all your dots, starting with Daedric Prey, so that everything that follows your pets are going to start doing 20% more damage right off the bat. You're going to grab Unstable Wall of Fire, throw that down, and same with your Mystic Orb. Now all of your dots are ticking, okay? Your dot Mystic Orb, Wall of Elements, your Daedric Prey, and your Boundless Storm, right? All of these dots are ticking, and you're going to want to make sure you reapply them anytime they fall off, right? Same with your Critical Surge, which isn't hurting the enemy, but it's healing you. You can also, at the very beginning of the battle, pop your Summon Twilight Tormentor and your Summon Volatile Familiar, okay? Get all your buffs up, then throw out your Tormentor buff and your Volatile buff, then throw on your Daedric Prey, get your dots out, and go into your spam bowl until one of these things falls off, and then go ahead and stop using Crystal Fragments, reapply the item that fell off, and then go back to Crystal Fragments, rinse and repeat. Use your ultimate whenever you feel like you need extra damage on a single target, or go to the back bar ultimate and throw down that AoE Fiery Rage whenever you want massive damage in a large area. As for the champion points, that'll be in the written guide. I'll link that down in the description below. It's just a lot easier to follow there than having me rattle them off to you here. So be sure to check that out in the written guide linked down below. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, and you want more videos like this about Elder Scrolls Online, please like and subscribe to the channel so that I know to make more content and so that YouTube knows to suggest this video to more people. If you ever want to hang out with someone else who loves this game, be sure to swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. I hope you have a fantastic day, night, or evening wherever you might be, and I'll see you in the next video.